look, this story really caught my eye, not least, by the way, because it occurred on my home turf of Hull. Council worker Jim Orwin, get this, everybody, he has been taken, well, he took his case to an employment tribunal. He was asked by his boss to put his pronouns at the end of his work email, and he did. But I can tell you, no one liked the pronouns that he chose. He keeps me company now. Good evening to you, Jim. Thank you very much for joining us. Can you tell anyone that's not familiar with your story, tell us what's happened?
I joined East Riding Council in 2018 on a one-year fixed-term contract, but that was subsequently extended 2 or 3 times. And then 4 years after I joined the council, we got an email circulated asking people if they wanted to put pronouns in email signatures. So with the email, there was a link to an external website called mypronouns.org. So I looked at the instructions on the email from the chief executive, and I read every page on the mypronouns.org website, and I realised it was an invitation to self-identify. So I self-identified, chose to self-identify as XY chromosome guy, / adult human male. I knew it would be provocative, so I told my immediate manager what I intended to put. And then after that, I was subjected to, I was asked to remove them, which I refused to do. I was told it was a reasonable management instruction, but my concern was that it could only be reasonable if it was legal, and I thought it was discriminatory towards gender critical people. So I refused to remove it. Subsequently, I was subject to a disciplinary hearing, and I was dismissed in August 2022. So I took the council to an employment tribunal. To bring it up to date, that hearing was heard in May this year, and I lost the case. And after that, the council submitted an application to recover their costs from me. Now, the normal circumstance in an employment tribunal is each party should bear their own legal expenses, but the judge agreed with the council and said that my case was vexatious. So, I mean, I think it can only be seen vexatious in as much as it was a gender critical person taking the council to an employment tribunal.
So tell us, Jim, so you obviously feel very passionate about this issue. What is it? So when you got that request about your pronouns, what is it that then kicks in with you in your mind?
I just felt that the idea of self-identification, I mean, it's written on the tin, isn't it? So people should be able to self-identify in any way they like, which I disagree with. So I just thought, well, I'll self-identify any way I like, and we'll see what the council thinks to that. There was no restrictions on what I could put in my email until I put what I wanted to put. So in effect, it wasn't self-identification. So my problem is self-identification is a danger to vulnerable people. It's an encroachment on women's and girls' private spaces, and the council bears quite substantial safeguarding responsibilities for children and vulnerable adults. And as far as I know, there was no risk assessment done on this at all. So I don't think it should have been introduced at all.
So, I mean, this is a real point of principle for you. You found yourself in a situation now where you've lost your job, you're out of work, you've gone into early retirement as a result. You've got a 12,000, just over actually, legal bill that you've got to find from somewhere. You've got a GoFundMe account as well, haven't you? So if anyone is watching this that shares your passion for speaking out in this way, they can help support you, is that right?
That's right, yeah. GoFundMe, search for my name on GoFundMe and you should be able to get that. Or alternative, you can't get the link to GoFundMe on the GoFundMe site. I've got my own website, jamesorwin.com, and there's a link at the top of the first page on that. But one of the things I wanted to say, Michelle, was I was nearing the end of my career. So I'm 67 now, and I'm quite embarrassed to say I don't know what I would have done if I was 35 with a mortgage and a family to support. So I think it's crucial that this is highlighted.
Indeed.
People are scared stiff to do anything, I think.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, look, you demonstrate the consequence of standing by those principles. I'm very sorry, Jim, to hear your story. Thank you very much for getting in touch and sharing it. And we wish you all the very best with your life going forward.
Thank you, Michelle.
I've got to tell you, everyone, that East Riding of Yorkshire Council say that costs are a usual consideration in legal proceedings. They feel that essentially his reflection of his pronouns. I'm paraphrasing their statement a bit here, but what they're essentially saying is that they feel that that could have been profoundly offensive to people within the trans community. The reason that the council introduced their pronoun policy was to promote inclusion of people who identify their gender in a way that is not necessarily consistent with their biological sex. I'm going to tweet his GoFundMe page, by the way, because you're a pensioner and now you've got to stump up £12,000 for a point of principle that many people would agree with, and of course many other people would not. Where are you on this?
Well, I'll tell you where I am, Michelle. I'm going to finish this show and go find that GoFundMe, and I'm going to put 50 quid in it, and I hope everybody else does, because what Jim is doing is he's standing up against the new religion in our society, the new religion of radical gender ideology that is telling people that little boys can become little girls and little girls can become little boys. And they talk a lot about inclusion, but basically they want to include everybody except people who disagree with them. The gender pronouns signatures on emails are used to basically force people to align themselves with a political ideology in public institutions that should otherwise remain neutral and politically independent. Now, that's the most important part of what Jim said. Local councils have a duty, a safeguarding duty to look after children, vulnerable people, pensioners, etc. Why are they jamming radical gender ideology, which, by the way, even the Cass review in this country recently concluded has insufficient scientific evidence and knowledge to support it? Why are they jamming it down people's throats? And
I've got to say, the council East Riding of Yorkshire, they would say that they didn't mandate it, they didn't force anyone to put their pronouns onto the email. It was a choice if that was what you wanted to do. I want to just show you a clip, though, of Donald Trump, because many people that are watching this kind of issue, seeing how things are panning out, would be very interested in some of the statements that he, not that long ago, made. Take a listen to this.
No serious country should be telling its children that they were born with the wrong gender, a concept that was never heard of in all of human history. Nobody's ever heard of this, what's happening today. It was all when the radical left invented it just a few years ago. Under my leadership, this madness will end.
James Schneider, what do you think?
I don't have the same principles as Jim in this, but I think this whole thing seems completely absurd. He shouldn't have been sacked for writing a thing on his email.
They will say that they sacked him because they asked him to take it off. They asked him, can you take this down because it'll offend people, and he said no.
Whatever. The whole thing is is a waste of time. I mean, whatever is going on there shouldn't be going on. It's wasting the people who work there's time. It's the HR's time. It's him from doing whatever his job is. I think the thing is silly. Now, that all said, I don't agree with him on the principle. I think the safeguarding point is a non sequitur. I think what Trump just said is totally historically and anthropologically
how is it a non
inaccurate.
sequitur? If a local council is presiding over schools, toilets, women's rights?
I think the IT guy, whether he has him or nothing on his email signature, is completely by the by.
But you understand that's a symbol of an institution that is embracing radical gender ideology, which is why we have schools.
I think that
have
is
been telling
such a remarkable stretch to say that
we have public institutions that have unisex toilets. We have women being forced to share spaces with men and boys.
Toilets.
So you are fine with radical gender ideology being imposed on public institutions. You're fine with little boys being told that they can self-identify.
So, firstly, the whole idea of radical gender ideology, I don't accept. But more crucially,
so you believe that somebody's gender identity supersedes their biological sex.
One second. No, I think that gender and sex can be different. It's not a supersession type issue. Gender is something that we perform, and sex is something that we're born with. Right? That's the facts of the matter. But I don't possibly see...
That's your fact.
I don't possibly see how an IT guy, whether he puts him, or whatever at the bottom of his email signature, is either here nor there. The whole thing seems to be completely got up nonsense. As I said,
But
I don't
Hang
think the guy should lose his
Michelle,
job.
Michelle.
You're missing the point.
Michelle,
This is
sorry,
not-
can I just
Jim,
quickly come in
It's just
here?
a reflection of what's going on. This is not about whether or not an IT guy is this, that or the other. This is about whether or not institutions, particularly public ones, should be embracing this ideology that has proven to be, firstly, very contested and disputed, secondly, based in no facts and reality, and thirdly, harmful, particularly to women and children.
Well, I'm sure that the second and the third points would be heavily contested by people who are knowledgeable about
You
this.
don't think gender ideology
this
is
stuff
harmful to women and children?
I don't think that so-called gender ideology.
Do you think? I mean, sorry. Can I just ask a couple of questions?
We're talking about the most trivial thing possible, and I accept the council should not.
When you're talking
the
about
council should not have done this thing against him because
James,
of it.
it's not about
but what
this
someone
case.
puts at the end of their email signature just could not matter less.
Right, first of all,
I don't care.
Fine, that's fine. That's your view. Why not let someone else have a view? When you're asking people, employees of public institutions, to express allegiance to a political ideology, that is not silly. That is a symbol of that institution embracing a contested political ideology. Secondly, the rights of women, the rights of our children, are not some silly culture war. This stuff matters. It matters for the protection of women. It matters for how we understand the importance of biological sex, how we protect children. It's not some silly culture war, which is how people on the left like you see it. This is what's really going on. What you guys have realised now with Donald Trump taking all levers of power in the US, what you've realised this week is the woke have lost. This is the beginning of the end.
I thought that was going to happen anyway, and Kamala Harris is not my
side. You guys have been advocating. Little boys can become little girls, and little girls can become little boys. All that stuff now is going to get rooted out of institutions across the West. And you guys haven't yet realised that the reason you've lost average voters, the reason you've lost the public is because you've been downplaying this stuff, saying, oh, this is a silly culture war, when actually, as we can see in America, people care a great deal about children and women's rights.
Remind me, you're a pollster, right? That's your profession. You're a polling guy.
One thing I do is polling.
So you're probably familiar with the polls from the election that they just had in the US,
sure,
and what issues were important.
Absolutely.
Where was the so-called radical gender ideology, or whatever you're talking about? Well, where did that come on the list of issues where people were voting?
If you look, for example,
was it high?
If you look, for example, at a study by Equi, which is a reliable pollster in the US, they looked at why Latino and Hispanic men, more than half of whom flipped to Donald Trump, they used to vote for the left. They used to vote for people like you.
Not the left. The left don't have a party in the US.
The Democrats, they used to vote for the Democrats.
The Democrats, yes, another corporate centre-right party.
And guess what? They flipped to Trump. Why? Because they've seen this stuff. They've seen this crazy radical left ideology and they don't want it anymore. You guys have downplayed this. You've called it a culture war. You got it wrong. Denigrating Western history, denigrating the rights of children. Yeah, telling us all we're all racist and we're all prejudiced and there's nothing to be proud about when it comes to Western nations. People don't think like that. You've been preaching to 10%, and now that's why Jeremy Corbyn's gone nowhere. That's why your movement's gone nowhere. Because people looked at it and said, we're proud of our country. We want to believe in our country.
I'm afraid that's complete nonsense.
Well, I'll tell you who is going somewhere.
But it isn't, is it? And you know it.
No, I do know very much it's nonsense.
Why do you think Corbyn was so thoroughly rejected?
We are going to...
And what's Brexit about?
Can I just say something?
Yes, it's about
respecting
toilets.
the nation.
It's about
respecting
it's about
the nation.
Toilets. It's probably about toilets.
It's about respecting the nation.
Excuse me, never mind respecting the nation. Respect me as your husband. I'm telling you to shut up because we're going to a break. So there we go. We're going to a break. We'll see you back in 2.
I used to have to use the razor that my ex-girlfriend used to shave her legs. It scratched me and it made me feel weird. But fear not, because Manscaped is back with a game changer. This isn't just any old shaver. We're talking about the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver with 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads. One for that baby smooth look and another when you want to keep it a bit rugged. Get this, it's waterproof. You can use it in the shower, by the pool, or even while scuba diving if that's your thing. This beauty runs for 75 minutes on a single charge. That's in enough time to shave your face, your mate's face, and still have juice left over for touch-ups. You'll also get their Power Shave Gel for a proper wet shave experience, and a face shave soother to keep your mug looking fresh and irritation-free. It's like having a barber in your bathroom, minus the awkward small talk. Click the link in the description and use the code GBN for a whopping 20% off and free shipping with the code GBN at manscaped.com. Join the 11 million blokes worldwide who trust Manscaped. Your face will thank you, and so will your wallet.
Well, hello there. Michelle Dewberry back with you. Time flies. It's almost 7 o'clock. Look, Matt Goodwin and James Schneider remain alongside me. We were trying to thrash out there just how big of an issue this kind of gender situation is, because many people will roll their eyes and go, oh, why are you talking about trans? There's only a tiny, minute percentage of the population that are in that category. So why are you all banging on about it?
Well, because what people on the left tend to do is they say, well, this is all silly culture wars. But when you're talking about the rights of women, the rights of our children, how we think about our history and identity, these are actually the foundations of our civilization. The reason Trump did so well, for example, including among a majority of white women, and he did very well among Hispanic and Latino women, even though many people on the left would have you think this is just a kind of male movement, that's not the case at all, is because mums and dads worry a lot about how these radical, divisive, unscientific ideologies have now not just seeped into our institutions, but have taken over many of our institutions, from, let's say, legacy media through to universities. Trump has come out and said he's going to take back the universities, which have been completely hijacked by radical leftists. I've worked in universities for 20 years, believe me, I know. The whole diversity, equity and inclusion agenda is a political project dressed up as equality, except it is a highly political ideology designed to impose conformity in public institutions. And, you know, James and other Corbynistas and so on might say this stuff doesn't matter, but they know deep down, actually, that voters really care about these cultural questions. They care about their country and they care about their children.
Do you know that deep down, or do you accept that deep down or not?
No.
Oh.
So, Matt is interested. Matt, you're wonderfully eliding a whole number of things. So let's try to be concrete. You're interested in evidence, apparently. So,
well, you told me you didn't read the Cass review, which is the number one source of evidence on this.
The evidence of why people voted and switched their vote to Donald Trump in the US presidential election, issues to do with gender, ideology and identity and any of these things didn't come in the top 6. I doubt they came in the top 15. This is not the reason why Trump won.
Many Americans, as you know, felt that Democrats were a threat to democracy because they stifled free speech and censorship on issues like this.
Which is a different issue.
No, it isn't.
And many Democrats...
What about Scotland? What happened in Scotland?
What about Scotland?
When the SNP tried to force everybody to sign up to gender self-identification, you know, 80% of the Scots looked at that and said, letting children self-identify without medical professionals is insane. Yet the SNP did it anyway, and then they lost power because people were like, this is crazy. So you say this stuff doesn't matter.
I don't think that's why... The SNP have been in power for 40 years,
The radical gender ideology was a big part of why the SNP started to come apart, and you know it was.
No.
The issue is when normal people look at this stuff...
None of the evidence suggests that. And the reason why you, Matt, and other people go on about it... Yeah. Is so that people are focused on this and not on...
Oh, right.
Yes.
Oh, is this a Marxist playbook? False consciousness.
No,
if we talk about this, they don't talk about the economy.
It's not false consciousness. It's quite clear. It's like there is a certain amount of airtime, let's say, for example, on television. There are certain amounts of column inches in newspapers, etc. Now,
I'd have more sympathy for that argument if people weren't jamming this stuff down people's throats. No one's jamming it down. Have you got kids?
No.
Right, well, let me tell you a story, because people who do have kids will know exactly what's going on. When their kids go to school or nursery, they will instantly encounter this radical gender ideology. They'll read the pronouns in the head teacher's emails. They'll be told by teachers, well, how do you identify? This stuff is everywhere. Mums and dads often aren't taught about it. The charities that advise governments, they've been like mermaids. They were shown to be sending breast binders to 13-year-olds without telling their mothers and fathers. And you sit here and say, this stuff doesn't matter. I actually care about what happens to our kids. I think it's really important. I think mums and dads out there want to know what's happening to their kids. You can't just brush this stuff under the carpet, James. It's real world. This stuff is actually happening.
Yes, I really care about what is happening to our kids, which is why I want them to be in properly funded schools. Why... What?
Yeah,
yes, you can. Matt,
it's not either or,
Matt,
James.
Matt,
it's not
Matt.
either or.
Will you only go for always the issues that are meant to or serve to? Maybe they aren't meant to. Maybe you just are very unfortunate as a crusader for ordinary people. Just very unfortunately, they end up dividing people and preventing us from coming together and seeing who are the real problems.
So do we avoid all issues that might
No,
divide
of course
us?
we don't avoid all issues, but there are ways of talking about things which you can talk about in a perfectly sensible way, which doesn't demonise people, which doesn't turn people into great threats when they're not, which generally, it's almost always the same thing. It is the most vulnerable people with the smallest possible voice that you attack again and again and again.
Michelle, 10 seconds.
Literally,
this is what happens, like Lisa and Andy. The culture wars are over. Say the people who started the culture war on our children, our history and our nation.
Well, look, I just want to pipe in before the show finishes because I am an actual woman and I am a mother. And I completely disagree that this is a small issue, that this is a trans issue, it's a fringe issue or whatever. This is a matter of safety for women and for girls. And it never ceases to amaze me that it's normally men that dismiss how much of an issue this is. Us women and children deserve our right to single-sex spaces. And I will keep speaking up for that. But for now, look at that.